It was a Saturday, the kind of heavy, humid afternoon that clung to your skin and made time feel slower. I was under my boss's sink, which I hadn't exactly volunteered for. He'd mentioned it offhand at work. The damn pipe's leaking again. If I can't fix it this weekend, Lisa'll burn the whole house down. Lisa. I knew her name before I met her. People said it with a certain smirk. You ever seen his wife? They'd say, and then never finish the sentence. Just a glance like you'd know when you did. I wasn't expecting her to open the door barefoot. The kind of woman who didn't bother pretending she wasn't tired. Or beautiful. Or both. You're Liam, right? She said, tilting her head like she was still deciding whether I looked trustworthy. I figured he'd send someone. I'm not a plumber, I said, scratching the back of my neck. Just good with tools, I guess. Her smile was slow, like she didn't believe me, but also didn't care. The kitchen was quiet. Too quiet. No music, no ticking clock. Just a faint drip under the sink and the soft pad of her steps as she moved behind me. You want something to drink? She asked after a long silence. I hesitated. My head was under the counter, hands damp, the smell of old water and rust in my nose. I'm good. She didn't answer. But a glass of water appeared next to my elbow anyway, condensation beating slowly down the side. It took longer than it should have. The leak wasn't even bad. I just kept slowing down. Every time she passed by barefoot on the cool tile. Every time she leaned against the counter, arms folded, not looking at me, but not looking away either. She didn't talk much, but I did. I filled the silence with whatever I could about work, the heat, the wrench that kept slipping in my hand. And she just watched, not smiling, not judging, just watching. I felt seen in a way that made my skin itch. And then I said something stupid, something about how her husband was lucky. She didn't laugh, didn't nod, just looked at me for a second longer than was polite. Then he's out of town. Miami. I tried to joke. That explains the silence. But she just tilted her head again. A beat, then another. Are you? I blinked. Saw the... She walked past me, brushing the edge of my arm with hers. Soft and accidental and not accidental. Are you out of town? She said again, her voice lighter now. Like it didn't matter. Like it wasn't already hanging in the room like smoke. My mouth was dry. The pipe stopped dripping. The kitchen felt smaller. She turned back before leaving the room, one hand still resting lightly on the frame of the doorway. You missed a spot, she said, nodding to a smear of grease on my jaw. Bathroom's down the hall. First door. Then she was gone. I stood up slowly, hand to my face, pulse stupidly loud in my ears. Her glass sat untouched, still sweating. And for the first time, I wondered if I should have said no to coming. I also knew I wouldn't leave yet. I stared at my reflection in the guest bathroom mirror longer than I should have. Not because of the grease on my face that wiped off easy, but because I didn't know what I was still doing there. I could have left. Should have. The leak was fixed, tools packed. I'd even texted my boss. All sorted. No charge. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji. A fucking thumbs up. I splashed water on my face, dried it with a towel that smelled faintly like rosemary, and still didn't feel clean. There was something about her, Lisa, that made me feel unsteady, like she could see the part of me that hadn't fully grown into myself yet. When I stepped back into the kitchen, she was barefoot again, one leg tucked under her on the couch, glass of wine in hand. Red, deep and dark. Didn't want it to go to waste, she said, lifting her glass a little. You sure you don't want one? I'm driving, I said. That's not a no. I sat down at the edge of the armchair, too upright, too far from her. She didn't comment on it. You know, she said after a moment, eyes still on the wine. He didn't even ask if I wanted it fixed. Just said it would be handled, like I wasn't the one living with the drip. Her voice cracked slightly on drip, then cleared her throat, covering it with a sip. I didn't know what to say. I'd only seen them together once, a holiday party at the office. He'd barely touched her. She'd smiled the whole night, like she was hosting someone else's life. I didn't mean to stay this long, I said. She shrugged. It's nice, having someone talk without trying to fix me. Then, after a beat, except the sink, that you were allowed to fix. I watched her fingers trace the rim of her glass. Absent slow. Her nails weren't done. She had a small scar on her wrist, an old burn maybe, and a freckle just below her collarbone I hadn't noticed earlier. She looked real, the kind of real you don't get in passing glances. I should go, I said, but didn't move. She looked at me then, really looked. Her voice softened. You always that polite. I guess. That's gonna get you eaten alive, she said, a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Then, quieter, unless you like being bitten. My breath caught. She didn't move, but the room did. Warped a little, tilted closer. I stood too fast. Her hand caught my arm, feather-light but enough. Not a grip, just contact. You don't have to rush out. I mean, unless you're really out of town. Her words echoed, not quite teasing anymore. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back up. I'm not, I said, barely above a whisper. She didn't let go. I told myself I was just being polite, staying a few more minutes, finishing the water she poured earlier. That I was just keeping her company. But her hand was still on my arm, and neither of us had spoken for too long. When she finally pulled back, she ran her fingers through her hair like she hadn't meant to touch me. Like that moment belonged to another version of herself. I should put on something less pathetic than wine-stained pajamas, she said with a dry laugh. Don't tell your boss his wife has completely lost the plot. Wouldn't dream of it, I said, trying to smile, but it came out crooked. My heart was beating too hard. She stood, passing close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. Not on purpose, but not entirely avoidable either. I stayed in the living room, too aware of everything. The soft creak of the hallway floorboards, the shifting light through the window blinds, the faint hum of the fridge. Her scent still clung to the towel in my hand, something herbal familiar. I thought about leaving. I even reached for my keys. But then her voice floated back from the hallway. Lo, you don't look 23. I turned toward the sound. She stood there now in a loose gray t-shirt and jeans, barefoot still, hair down. And you don't look like someone who needs fixing, I said before I could stop myself. Her smile faltered just slightly. Then the knock. 3 short taps on the front door. Too casual to be urgent, too timed to be random. She froze. I did too. Don't say anything, she said quickly, voice tight. Then softer, please. She stepped quietly toward the door, peeked through the peephole. I could only see the back of her, the shift in her posture, the way her shoulders tightened. It's just the neighbor, she whispered, half turning. She does this sometimes when the lights are on too late. Thinks I'm lonely. Are you? I asked before I could swallow the words. She looked at me then, long enough to answer without speaking. She didn't open the door. After a minute, the knock didn't come back. I should go, I said again. This time I meant it, or wanted to, but I didn't move. She stepped closer instead. You remind me, she said, of someone you used to know. Not in how you look, just how you see things. I swallowed. How do I see things? Like they matter. We were too close now. My shoulder was almost against her chest. She didn't back up. Her fingers grazed my wrist, barely there, but deliberate. I should have stepped away. Instead, I whispered, Why didn't you open the door? She looked at me for a long time. Then, because I didn't want anyone interrupting, there was a kind of silence that didn't settle. It waited, pressed down on your chest like weight, like warning. That was the kind of silence between us now. Lisa hadn't moved after saying it. I didn't want anyone interrupting. She just stood there, barely inches away, eyes holding mine like she wasn't sure who would break first. I should have said something casual. I should have pulled the air back into the room with a joke, a deflection, anything to put distance back where it belonged. But all I said was, What are we doing? It came out raw. Too raw. My voice cracked a little on we, and I hated that she heard it. Hated that it wasn't smooth or clever or distant. She blinked once, slow. Then, almost without breath. I don't know. Her fingers brushed my wrist again, then pulled back like she'd touched something hot. I shouldn't be doing this, she whispered. I nodded. I know, but I didn't leave. She sat down on the couch again, elbows on knees, fingers threaded in her hair. For a second, I saw her age, not in how she looked, but in how tired she sat. Like something inside her had been fraying for a long time, and this, whatever this was, had just tugged the loose thread harder. You know he hasn't touched me in 7 months? She said suddenly. My throat tightened. I didn't even notice at first. That's the worst part. You get so used to not being looked at. You stop wondering if you're worth seeing. I didn't know where to look. The floor felt safest. I shouldn't be telling you this, she added, voice quieter now. I'm not trying to make you feel sorry for me. She exhaled, laughed once, sharp and bitter. You stood in my kitchen and noticed my scar. No one's noticed that in 10 years. I looked at her then. Really looked. Her hair a little messy, her lips chapped, that same freckle just below her collarbone peeking from her shirt. She looked like someone trying hard to stay still when everything inside was shaking. I didn't come here for this, I said carefully. But you're still here, she said, eyes locked on mine. Why? The question hung there, heavy and electric. I don't know, I said, the lie obvious between us. She stood again, slow, like she wasn't sure what her body would do next. Then she took a single step closer. Liam, she said soft, if you kiss me right now, I won't stop it. I stared at her, open, breathless, unsure if I'd heard her right. Then she added, barely above a whisper, but I'll regret it. Tomorrow, maybe even before it's over. She didn't touch me this time, didn't move closer, just waited. And in that breath between decisions, with everything unspoken stretched tight between us, the only sound was the tick of the fridge starting again. I'll regret it, she'd said. And still, she hadn't looked away. She gave me the choice, not the permission. There's a difference. I was about to speak, to say I couldn't, or that I wanted to, or something in the middle, when her phone lit up on the counter behind her. A single buzz, then another. She turned slightly, saw the screen, and froze. What is it? I asked, already knowing. She picked it up, stared at it too long. It's him, she said. Her husband. She didn't answer, didn't even unlock the screen, just held it like it might burn her. Then slowly set it back down, face down, her hands now trembling the slightest bit. He's on a layover, she said, not looking at me. In Chicago. I took a small step back. Did he say why he's calling? No, she whispered. But he never calls just to check in. The air between us thinned. The weight of what almost happened, what could have, hovered like a hell breath. She sat again, suddenly smaller, like something had folded inward. Then, without warning, you don't remember me, do you? I blinked. What? She looked up, eyes glassy but steady. You wouldn't. You were what, 17? 18 maybe. That summer your dad was in the hospital. I froze. My chest went still. I volunteered at the hospice, she said. Back then, before I met him. You came in some mornings with coffee for the nurses. You didn't talk much. I sat down slowly, the chair cold under me. I remember my voice broke. I remember someone who used to bring books. Read out loud sometimes, even when no one was listening. She smiled faintly. That was me. There was a pause. A full silence this time. You were kind, I said. I didn't know how much that meant until after. You look like a kid, trying not to cry in front of strangers, she said. I thought, if someone had just looked at me like that when I was younger, maybe I wouldn't have chosen all the wrong things. Her voice cracked. She looked away. That changed everything. The heat between us cooled. Not gone, but shifted, deepened, now layered with something older, messier. Not lust. Not quite. Recognition. You saved me, I said quietly, before I knew I needed saving. She shook her head, lips pressed tight. I don't want to be someone you owe. You're not. Then what am I? I looked at her, really looked. Not as my boss's wife. Not as a woman who'd nearly kissed me. But as someone who'd been carrying too much, too long. I don't know yet, I said. But I think I was supposed to find you again. She opened her mouth to respond, but the front door handle clicked. The front door handle turned, a slow, unmistakable click that sounded louder than anything that had come before it. Lisa shot up from the couch, every part of her suddenly alert. I stood too, heart pounding so loud I could feel it in my throat. The door didn't open, just moved, like someone tested it. Then nothing. She stared at the knob, breath caught, waiting. After 10 seconds of stillness, she let out a breath so quietly it almost broke me. No key, she murmured. It's not him. He must have told someone to check on me. My mouth was dry. Should I go out the back? She didn't answer. Not immediately. Instead, she turned to me, and for the first time, she looked scared. Not of being caught, of being seen like this. I can't lie well, Liam, she whispered. I was never good at it. He'll know something happened, even if nothing did. My instinct was to close the space between us to hold her, but I didn't. Something told me not to. You could lie once, I said gently. Just this once. She shook her head. I don't want to. The silence between us now was different. No longer charged, just fragile. Like we'd stretched something too far and now stood in the quiet before it snapped. I've been lonely for a long time, she said. I got good at hiding it. But you walked in and I felt like someone turned a light on I didn't know was off. I swallowed. You think I didn't feel it too? I think, she said carefully, you're young enough to still believe timing doesn't matter. I winced. Not because it was cruel, it wasn't. Just true. I'm not a kid, I said, softer than I meant to. And I didn't stay because I wanted to feel important. I stayed because I didn't want you to sit in that silence alone. She closed her eyes, took a slow breath, and she stepped closer. And this time, she didn't touch me. You changed something in me, she whispered. But I'm not going to ruin you just to feel alive again. I shook my head. You didn't ruin anything. Her eyes welled, but didn't fall. Don't make this beautiful when it isn't. And then she did something unexpected. She kissed my cheek. Not seductively. Not as invitation. Just a soft, sad press of lips against skin. A full stop at the end of a sentence that had already been written. I'm going to tell him it's over, she said. Not because of you, but because of what I remembered about myself when you looked at me. I nodded once. I didn't ask if she'd call. I didn't ask what would happen next. Some moments aren't meant to be followed, just honored. I left by the front door, and she let me. It's been 4 months since that night. I still think about the way her front door sounded when it closed behind me. Soft, final, like a chapter being sealed, not slammed. We never spoke again. Not directly, but word got around. Quietly. My boss took a leave from the company a few weeks later. Family stuff, they said. A divorce, someone whispered. No scandal. No blow-up. Just a clean, quiet split. Like two people stepping back from something they'd both known was already gone. I don't know where she is now. I never saw her move out, but she doesn't live there anymore. The house sat empty for a while. Then a new couple moved in. Young, bright, loud. It's different now. No rosemary in the air. No lights on too late. But I remember the way she looked that night. Barefoot and tired and suddenly real. Not perfect. Not tragic. Just seen. And I think maybe that's the most anyone can hope for in the end. What changed for me? I stopped thinking I needed to chase things that spark. Started noticing the ones that stay lit in silence. There's a part of me that still wants to know what would have happened if I'd kissed her. If I'd stayed. But there's a bigger part, the part that grew up that night, that knows we gave each other what we were meant to give. Nothing more, nothing less. She reminded me that connection doesn't always mean possession. That sometimes the most honest thing you can do is walk away before the damage begins. And I gave her something too, I think. A reflection. A reminder of who she was before all the roles. Wife, hostess, ghost in her own house. Maybe just for a moment, I helped her remember the shape of her own name. I dated someone new a few months after. It didn't last, but it was healthy. No drama. No tension stretched tight like a wire. Just two people figuring out what they want. I don't mistake kindness for romance anymore. Or loneliness for a spark. And yet, once in a while, I still drive past her old street. Not to see her. Just to remember that version of myself. The one who stood in a kitchen with shaking hands and chose not to cross a line, even though his heart already had.